Hey guys, it's Tina. You know, the Lord has been warning his children for generations and generations. The time has come for his judgment on this earth. We know that, right? He's a good father. He warns us. But he has pushed me tonight to tell you an incident that had happened for his glory. Keep his promises close to your heart every day. Because you may have plans for that day, but he may have bigger plans for you. Because his thoughts aren't our thoughts, and his ways aren't our ways. Back in February of 2018, I drive for a school department. I drive the van. I take kids to school, elementary age kids to school. It's kind of like the Breakfast Club every day. They're good kids. I pray for these kids, and I love these kids. I was headed out in a rural town in Maine, where dirt roads are still common. And I started driving, and my phone rang. I pulled the van over, answered the call, and it was one of my students saying they weren't going to school because they weren't feeling well. I said, okay, well, I'll pray for you. Hope you feel better. Call Miss Tina and let me know in the morning, tomorrow morning, if you're going to go to school. And a song came on, You Make Me Brave. And I'm screaming it out in the van, you make me brave. And I'm screaming it. And all of a sudden, my phone lights up again, and I pull over, and it's another student. And I was like, okay. Miss Tina, I'm not going to school today. I don't feel well. I said, okay. So well, call me. And I love you. Oh, I love you too, Miss Tina. I get driving again about a mile down the road. My phone goes off again. Now remember, I drive 4 children. So I pull over, and a parent from another kid called me and said, so-and-so's not going to school today. I said, okay. I said, will you tell him that I'm thinking about him? Sure, we'll tell him. Have a good day, Miss Tina, you too. So I sat there for a minute, and I said, Lord, what is going on here? What is going on? Prayed for the sick children. Meanwhile, I had about a half an hour to wait, 45 minutes to wait. I pulled into a store, which is common, pull into the store and grab a cup of coffee and see some of my friends, my childhood friends that I've known all my life. And I pulled in and grabbed a cup of coffee, chatted for a moment, and got back in the van. Well, I started driving out of the driveway, and the Lord spoke, and he said, back up. Audibly. I said, okay, Lord, I will back up. So I backed up. I pulled into the only parking spot. Of course, it's a convenience store where you can get groceries as well, and coffee, whatever you need. I backed up and I looked over, and there was a woman hunched over on the steering wheel. I knocked on the window. I said, hey, you okay? You okay? I ran in the store and grabbed one of my friends to have her call 911 and to come out and help me. I opened the door of the van. The woman, for a second, I didn't think anything really that she was dead. I didn't think anything like that. I opened the van door, and I picked her face up, and she wasn't breathing. But I didn't think that at the time. I know she was cold to touch. She was very cold. So I took my jacket off, and I laid it on her. Remember, this is February in Maine, and 10 degrees, 15, 20 degrees. So I covered her up, and I grabbed her face, and I did the only thing I knew. Lord Jesus, help me. Lord Jesus, help me. Lord Jesus, help me. Help me, Lord. And I prayed over this woman while people stood around and watched. For a second, I did not think she was dead. My friend came running to the van door, to the opposite door, the passenger side, and she had opened the door and she hit the ground. Something was holding her down, not letting her come in the van. And she was crying, telling me she couldn't move. And I kept focusing on this woman who was frozen and dead in the van. And I kept praying over her. Praying over it. The only thing I knew what to do. Meanwhile, in a rural town, 911 calls bounce back and forth to different counties. So while we were trying to get a hold of 911, I continued to hold this woman's face and pray for her. Words just came out, what the Lord wanted to say. And this woman looked at me. She picked her face up and she looked at me. She looked in my eyes. And she took a breath. She took another breath. And she looked at me. And she took another breath. We got her up to 18 breaths a minute. And she smiled at me while I told her about Jesus. I told her about Jesus, that all sin is forgiven. That he died on the cross for all sin. And he didn't create her for this. All sin is forgiven by the bloodshed of Jesus. We finally got a hold of 911. They said we needed to take her out of the van and lay her on the ground. Now, she was a heavy-set woman. Her legs were frozen into the seat of the car. She couldn't move. So we prayed some more, and a man came over with a white shirt, blonde hair, blue eyes, and pleated pants. And he come to my door and he says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes. Please help me lift her up. I'm supposed to lay her on the ground. I can't do it by myself." So I swung her around from the seat. And I picked her up and he grabbed her back. And she was a heavy-set woman, but she was lighter than a feather. Laid her down. She wouldn't take her eyes off me. She was breathing and she was smiling. So the EMTs got there and I got back in my van to pick up my last child, and I was right on time. I picked him up, I drove him to school, and I dropped him off. Not for 1 second did I think this woman was dead, because she was breathing. She was looking at me. She was blinking her eyes. I picked the young boy up from school and I brought him home that afternoon. I pulled into the yard and his grandfather was there to wait for him. And he looked at me, he goes, "You found my niece at the store." I said, yes, I did. He said, "How did you get her to breathe?" I said, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was Jesus. Jesus got her to breathe. He was there." And that's all he said. I got back in my van, drove back to the old school, got in my car, and there was a text message waiting for me. It was the daughter-in-law of the woman. She said, "Thank you for finding my mother-in-law." They let her go. Her core temperature was 74 degrees when you found her. they could only get her up to 80. How did you get my mother to breathe? It wasn't me. I said it was Jesus. It was Jesus. Jesus got her to breathe. I didn't know she died. I didn't think that. I got home that day. It started snowing out. 6 or 7 inches of snow, 8 inches of snow. Now Father knows my heart. And He knows what I'm thinking. But His thoughts aren't our thoughts. And His ways aren't our ways. I had to go out and shovel snow. I bundled the kids up. Brought them outside with me. I got on my knees. And I said, Father, my soul hurts. I thought she was alive. He knows our hearts. And I sat there and I cried out to Him because He's a good Father. I sat there and cried out to Him because of my hurting soul. I went to bed that night and I had a dream. I was standing in this long tunnel with a gulf. I can't really explain it, like a crevice or a gulf. And I looked across and there was this woman. Her face was beautiful. Her face was beautiful. The man standing next to her. It was all light. It was beautiful. She waved at me. She said, thank you. I could hear it in my head. And the man wrapped his arm around her. And she turned around and she walked back into the light. I woke up. And I repented because of my own selfishness. My own human self. But He's a good Father. He is a good Father. But His ways aren't our ways. And His thoughts aren't our thoughts. They are much higher. And He is a faithful Father. He never leaves us or forsakes us. He is faithful. He put me on here tonight to tell you my story. To let you know, to have hope for what's coming. To have faith and keep your promises close to your heart. I love you all. Good night.